Welcome to the Abasa ELDP graduation ceremony for 2011. My name is Thabo Matsimela, and as per your program, you'll see that I'll be your MC for the evening. During the festive season, everything, you just need a reason to celebrate. And I know that tonight is not one of those times when you just need a reason to celebrate. This marks a special occasion in the history of Abasa as well, because we're celebrating graduates, people who've put in hard work, who've put in a lot of hours into making sure that they graduate tonight. To do the welcoming and the opening of the speech, I'd like to welcome Mr. Andile Khumalo, the President of Abasa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the Pretoria branch. Thank you very much, Thabo. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending tonight. My job here is a very simple one, a very brief one, but perhaps as a way of background, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Abasa and how we end up with programs such as this one, maybe speak a little bit about this particular project. At Abasa, we are, simply put, only about two key things. Number one is to increase the number of black chartered accountants, and number two, to develop those already either aspirant CAs, SAs, or the guys who are already CAs, and find a way to develop them holistically. On the increasing of the numbers, you guys are all numbers people in this room. I don't need to repeat to you the kind of situation we have insofar as SACA accredited chartered accountants are concerned. We are sitting in terms of black just over 12%, and by that I mean African, Indian, and colored, and with Africans particularly underrepresented and colors. So we have a situation where, whether we like it or not, we all need to find a way to make sure that this particular profession appeals to the majority of our people in the country, because frankly speaking, that's where the pool of SA citizens is from. As and when this economy grows, hopefully, and we start becoming a real superpower in the developing world, South Africa is going to need the skills that chartered accountants are perhaps the only people who can provide. So for as long as we have a profession that is only known to, appeals to less than 10% of the population, clearly we have a problem with there. So our job at Abasa is really to increase the awareness of the profession. That's why we do the work that we do at school level, is to increase the pipeline of the students that register for BCom and BAct degrees to become CAs eventually. That's why we have all the bursary schemes that we have. That's why we work with SACA so often, even in the tutorial programs and many programs that they have, to ensure that we have more and more African and colored candidates registering for engineering, writing board exams, and passing. On the development side of existing members, it is the one area which I think historically Abasa has struggled with. We're 26 years old now, and we really come from a history where Abasa was formed as an activist organization back in the days. And we were trying to insist for us to have a license to talk in this profession, and this profession to be opened up to black people. And suffice to say, I think we're way past that now. We're past asking for our seat on the table. And if anything, the more corporate tables you see, the more boardrooms you see, the more black people you see, and hopefully we'll get more and more black CAs. But where we've kind of had a challenge as Abasa historically is to say, how do we remain relevant to our members who are what we call general members, or should we call qualified members? So typically a lot of people know about Abasa at university level. A lot of people know about Abasa when they do their articles. A lot of people know about the Abasa as and when they pass their board exams. They're invited to the Abasa orientation day. And all of you guys at some point kind of met Abasa. But unfortunately, where we come from, Abasa's kind of ended there. And the reason for that is, as I've mentioned, the focus was a lot on how do you increase the number and throughput. I think that the time has come for us to focus more and more on the development of our members, and less from a technical perspective, because as chartered accountants, we have SACA with their CPD and their 100 emails a day to take care of that. And if you're anything like me, I read the first paragraph and I determine whether I want to be a tax practitioner, or I want to go to the Young CAs event, or whether I want to read about the Companies Act, or whether I want to read about the Consumer Protection Act. We've got a very able and very proficient professional body in SACA, which takes care, I guess, out of the technical education side. And when this particular program was first thought through by my predecessor, past president Tsakani Mashazi, the real idea was, how do we contribute to the qualified members? How do we add value to you guys who are already at management level, whether it's junior management level, it does not matter. And as you progress in your particular fields, whether you're just a recent partner like Jay Sheila, or whether you have just landed a big financial management job out in commerce and industry, there are certain leadership traits that unfortunately with the very technical background that we have, that kind of takes us up to being CAs, we don't really get exposure and time to develop those skills. And one of the things we discussed a hell of a lot this morning, Eunice, you'd be interested in, is how many firms, especially the bigger firms, have many programs for managers and their partners. And you will hear, as you associate with our graduates, how all of them who've been to very different ones, all 4 firms believe that what this particular program with our partnership with USB gives them is something very different to what they go through either in the management level or in the partner induction levels. So those are the outcomes, and that's really what we're trying to achieve as a VASA. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I think you have. I was lucky enough to sit in the sessions this morning, and I can tell you that in Tanti and Gugu, you have 2 ABASA board members who are adamant that this particular program needs to last, certainly for as long as they are around. And because we rely a lot on sponsorship, we rely a lot on outside funding, and we rely on the support of the firms to get you guys onto this program, we hope that it's events like these that we can be able to showcase the value that this program is. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank the USB for standing by us for as long as they have, and hopefully we can take this program to the next level. And I'd like to thank Tanti and Gugu. Tanti is our Vice President for the work that they've done so far in making this program a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, my President. Moving on, I need to introduce now the Chairman of KPMG, Mr. Yunus. Yeah, Yunus Silliman, sorry.
First of all, let me welcome you to Wanuka. For those of you who have not been to Wanuka, this is our surprised addition to the KPMG family since the beginning of last year. And if it weren't as many of you, we would have been sitting in the house upstairs and having a bit more informal of a chat. But really big welcome to you. And from, let's say, my own perspective, it's really a great initiative that ABASA has started a few years ago. When Tanti was telling me this morning about how it started off, it reminded me of my role in ABASA in the early 90s. I got involved in the early 90s in the Western Cape. And it was more by default. I thought, let me just go and see. I've just come to the Cape environment. I don't know many, call it accountants, they call them black accountants. But let me go and attend one of their meetings. And I attended one of their meetings and became a member of the committee just by default. Someone said, there's one of the guys that just arrived in Cape Town. He's probably got plenty of time, So I ended up becoming a member of that, call it board of the Western Cape. And within a few months, I became the chairman, was the current or the previous chairman had resigned. And the thing is that I didn't realize what I was going into when I became the chairman, because it was immediately after the USAID stopped funding ABASA. So probably much before your time, Adila, in 1993, the World Bank through USAID used to fund ABASA, and that used to result in funding all the expenses. And with lots of money coming in, we had offices in the big regions, and we had people, secretary generals, and all sorts of people. And when I got into this role, I realized very quickly that we were bankrupt. We actually had no money to pay salaries or telephone bills or light accounts or whatever. And I thought to myself, now what have I got myself into? And it just so happened around that time I was traveling to the US, and I don't know how I got to know about the NABA conference in Houston, 1994 in Houston. And so I was traveling to Chicago, and I finished what I had to do, and then I thought, okay, if I'm here anyway, let me just go to this NABA conference. And that's how I ended up at the NABA conference in Houston. And I think what I came back with was also great ideas, just like what you guys came back with a few years ago. And at that time, we'd never really had a successful conference as ABASA. So, that way we came back, when I came back from NABA, the key thing was to try and come up with some revenue generating opportunities. And that's how we held our major conference in Cape Town, having our first black accountant, which was Wiseman and Kushner. Come and talk to us about leadership as well. So I think it's really gratifying to know that, you know, how many years ago, 17 or how many years, it's more than 17 years ago. 94, yeah, 17 years later, that we're investing into the sort of people like yourself, which is fantastic. So I think, you know, from my perspective, it's also great to see a really diverse group of people coming to this kind of event. And well done for being selected to be part of this initiative. You know, in fact, I've been a judge or the chairman of the judging panel for a business awards thing that's sponsored by FNB over a number of years. And about 3 years ago, I was just about finishing off the award ceremony, and I went over to the CEO of this bank and I said, you know what, I think that what we're failing to capture or to utilize in this award ceremony is the experience of all these winners. And shouldn't we start something what we call is like the entrepreneurship school, which would help to share the knowledge that's contributed to the successes of these business leaders. And we started it 3 years ago. And last weekend, I went and spoke to them about, coincidentally, financial governance. I know the gentleman was talking about the topics this morning, you know, the financial governance within municipalities, and the topic I gave last Sunday, in fact, at the FNB Learning Center was on financial governance. And I think the important thing is that we all have different levels of knowledge, and you don't learn that, you know, at university. And that's the key thing, is sharing knowledge. And I think the important thing that you've all benefited from is the knowledge that both the University of Stellenbosch and the panel and yourselves, what you've learned through the process. But I think the key thing is to actually be able to get out there, to be able to run a business. You know, more than just being in the profession or being outside the profession, it's important to learn the business skills. And that's where this entrepreneurship school as well. It's about learning to run a business. You don't learn that overnight through studying very hard with your theory. But I think it's a big thank you to Stellenbosch University as well, to partner with Abasa to really make this thing happen. And I think that's important because a combination of the theoretical skills as well as some practical experience as well as business experience which you bring to the table, and the themes that you talked about, is the challenges we face from day to day. I mean, all of us have the same challenge of retaining, call it, black accountants. I mean, in '94, when we had this conference, we also said, let's set a target. And believe it or not, the target was too aspirational. You know, we talked about 2,000 black African CAs by the year 2000. And I think we now currently may have exceeded the 2,000. But in 2000, we had nowhere close to 2,000 black African CAs. So I think the key thing about these kind of initiatives is really about learning. And we as KPMG are proud to be part of this process by, you know, giving you the access to the facilities and entertaining you as well in the process. But I think the important thing, we all have a role to play. And we all have to put our minds and hands together and say, let's help each other. Because one of the driving forces in the 90s that I got involved in Abasa was, what can I do to give back? And that's the key thing. We all have challenges in our different careers and wherever we come from. But it's about giving back. And this is what this is about. So you're going to obviously walk away today with being graduated, with certificates from USB. But I think the key thing is it doesn't stop here. You never stop learning. And I think the process that comes about from this process is that what is it that could be done differently? You know, there obviously will be great opportunities to provide feedback to USB and do other things. But I think the important thing going forward, what is it that you could do to develop other accountants or other black CAs, and not necessarily stop where you are from at the moment. So that's the key thing. And I mean, as I said, you never stop learning. Every one of us, you know, even today, I would learn a lot more things. Excuse me. And one of the things that I also had suggested back in the 90s was to get involved in the official structures that are already there. Like was mentioned, SAICA has got, Adil has mentioned the programs. And to take advantage of that, because I think the important thing is it's no use duplicating. It's about doing what is right and also investing in the right initiatives. But I think the important thing also from an Abasa point of view is to invest in the right, call it, events or right opportunities to develop our accountants. The one thing that I think is important to consider as well is we can get them to donate more back to Abasa for benefiting from